Hello everybody and welcome to this new episode of Books Up Close. My name's Chris Lloyd and I'm here to bring you reviews of things I'm reading, things I'm enjoying. So this week I am reviewing Stephen King's novel Later, which came out this year, 2021. So this novel is part of the Hard Case Crime series that various authors have been submitting work to, and this is King's third book in that series. And while the other two were great, Joyland in particular I thought was a really good book set in a carnival, this book I am sad to say is not great. I say this as a fan of Stephen King. Of course he has his problems. He is very much fixated on writing about straight white people, of course, in a very particular kind of America. That's his thing, it's his shtick. He's not great at writing about race, he's not great about writing about sexuality or disability or any other things, but in terms of the kind of power of his storytelling, he is still a great writer. He writes clearly, engagingly, in a way that makes you want to turn the pages, right? You fly through his books, or I do at least. But it's a very uneven career trajectory. So Later follows the story of Jamie Conklin, who is a teenage boy living in New York who can quote unquote see dead people. And there is obviously a very quick early joke about the Sixth Sense. The first time he kind of realises that he can see dead people is when he kind of walks past a crime scene and he sees the person who has been killed standing right next to the crowd. So the story follows Jamie and his mum Tia, who is a literary agent, and one of the kind of early scenes in the book is that one of her most famous authors dies suddenly in the middle of writing like this massive book that's going to end one of his series. So Tia doesn't fully believe that Jamie can see dead people, but she asks him to go to the house of this author and hopefully see him there so he can talk to him and get the rest of the plot, which is what he does, and it allows his mum to kind of finish writing the book. I'm not going to say any more after that, I don't want to spoil more of the plot. But that's the kind of setup, that his mum suddenly realises that her son can do this thing. From there, we learn about Tia's girlfriend, Liz, who's an NYPD cop who is involved in some weird things, we find out. And she eventually ropes Jamie into doing some investigation because of his abilities. So, in short, the book it's a very kind of standard supernatural story for Stephen King. There's nothing particularly special or new here. It's very kind of tired in a way. It doesn't add much to either the kind of crime genre or the supernatural crime genre. And weirdly, even though this is quite a slim book, it's only about 200 odd pages, it feels baggy. It feels like there's parts of it that you don't really need. It doesn't hum in the way King books usually do. I wasn't desperate to turn the pages. The characterization too is not the best. It's kind of lazy across the board, and one of the key problems for me is the central character of Jamie, in that he narrates the novel, and what Stephen King cannot do is write teenage characters. I don't know how old King is now, but getting into that voice of a teenage boy really did not feel real. It did not feel believable. It felt like an old person trying to write a young person, and by that I'm not trying to be ageist, but rather just this sense of like him trying to approximate what he thinks young people sound like, which always comes off weirdly, I think. Really, at the heart of that is this kind of later, in that it's something that Jamie always says, like, later, but that then becomes this endless, repeated word, and it just becomes clunky, right? It's just as a way for King to signal this is how young people speak. Okay, so I would never recommend this book if you want to read something by King. This is not the first thing I would go to suggest. What I would suggest would kind of fall into two categories. If you are more on the kind of supernatural end of things, you like the fantasy and, you know, the kind of horror stuff, I would suggest either Salem's Lot or The Shining. Two kind of early books, but really, really great ones. Great storytelling, really good drive in both. And The Shining is not like the film. If you don't like the supernatural horror stuff, you just want a non-ghost horror-like book, I would go to either Misery or Dolores Claiborne. Two beautifully written novels, I would say. Dolores Claiborne is a fantastic book about gender and about abuse. but written in a really, really believable and textured, fully rounded voice. And Misery, if you've seen the film, is just a fantastically tense story, but it's written really well. So I would suggest any of those if you're going to go down the King route. Don't do this book. So in short, I'm giving this, sadly, 2 out of 5. If you have read it though and you feel differently, please do let me know below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, if I've missed the mark. So in the meantime, please do like this video, share it with people, comment beneath, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell for notifications. If there are books you want me to read, I mean, I've got a lot on the pile, but if you want me to read certain things, let me know and I can add it to the list. Until the next time, look after yourselves, stay well, and keep reading. See you soon.